Good evening, everyone. I'm Dustin Slayton. This is my friend Zach Waters. This is Cut to the Point. This is episode 2. Well, we already filmed kind of episode 2, but I don't know. Some crazy stuff kind of happened here recently. Just didn't feel as like right to air it and stuff like that. Just it was talking about our 3-year anniversary.
This Saturday, right?
Yeah, this Saturday. Actually, tomorrow.
Yeah.
This won't be posted until probably later.
Yeah.
I'll have to figure out how to edit a video. No, we had Patrick on there and Cody and Paige and myself. And we were talking about the 3-year anniversary. Patrick is no longer with us anymore. He decided he would quit, and a lot of it was due to mental health. And that's what me and Zach are here to talk about today is mental health. May is Mental Health Month, so I thought what better person to share the topic of mental health than my friend Zach.
I appreciate that.
For people that don't know, me and Zach met on a 22 Kill hike, and if you don't know who 22 Kill is, they're called, what are they called now?
One Tribe Foundation.
One Tribe Foundation. It's a veteran organization. Well, I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, no, it's a veteran and military and law enforcement nonprofit that supports mental health awareness, suicide prevention, counseling programs, and they also have other programs for therapy and just kind of let your hair down and enjoy some things about life that you forget to consider.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when me and Zach met, we were on a 22 Kill hike for Tank Machine, and for me personally, that was I kind of needed that a lot because I met some veterans on the hike that I'm still friends with today. But at that time in my life, like I got fired from my job and I started kind of getting depressed. Like I really needed that outlet at that time to just kind of help me get motivated and get back on top of the game. Like I remember reaching out to Tank and I was like, hey man, like I lost my job. If you need anything, like help set up or anything like that, like I'm down. And he's like, bro, just bring your booth. Come on. We got you.
He was like that, man. He still is.
He still is.
Yeah.
I keep in contact with him. He's got a really small group of people now that he engages with.
I respect that.
But on that hike, like being a civilian and then being around a bunch of veterans, like I think Tank was doing a really good job of closing that gap of civilian veteran, like
he bridged the gap in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, that was early on before it was a thing.
Yeah. And I did get cussed out because I let the American flag touch the deck, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Knife handed me and shit. Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what the hell's going on right now.
Yeah. That's the wrong place.
Yeah. I do remember
But you carried it the highest the rest of the time than anybody else.
No, after that I got my ass ripped. I was like, okay, I know the rules now.
Yeah, you got counseled.
Yeah. But I do remember on the hike, we were about 7 miles in.
Yeah.
And we all needed to piss. And we're all like going in a line. We're all hiking together, and somebody's like, there's the restrooms on the left-hand side, and everybody just broke.
Yeah.
Running after the freaking
that restroom wasn't the same.
It was disgusting.
That latrine was it was done.
It was disgusting when we went in there. It was definitely busted after we left. It was like like a neighborhood park or something.
Yeah, it was not to sanitary conditions. And then when we got done with it, everyone was trying to get back because no one wanted to fall behind pace.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I've never seen a bunch of people tactfully urinate so quick before.
Right. So we ended up hiking 22K, which turns out to be like 13.2 miles or something like that. And we were raising awareness for veterans. And that was the first time I was kind of introduced to 22 Kill. And after that, I had done like a church function at my church here in town in Midlothian. And I didn't know the guy at the time, but my friend B-Game was part of 22 Kill at the time. And his daughter had come to the VBS that we were having at our church. And I remember seeing him walk in. I was like, I saw his ring, and I can't remember what else he had on. I think he had a shirt, and I was like, is he part of that? And like me and B-Game became
close,
best of buds. Like,
yeah.
I love that dude. He's a crazy jarhead, but he's a rad dude. And I got heavily involved in 22 Kill and just was all about promoting mental health and awareness for veterans and first responders. And oddly enough, man, like this is another low point in my life. I don't know if you're on TikTok. Anybody's on you on TikTok?
Man, I started out as a joke, and now I'm addicted to it. Like,
So have you seen on TikTok when they say post a picture of your lowest moment and no one knew?
yeah, no, I thought that was a cool trend for a while. I respected it. I thought it was
So-
a great way to bring up the topic.
For me, that is the Freedom Espresso picture of me on Pikes Peak.
Okay, I
That
did not
was
know that.
for me. So
It's good
at
coffee.
that time,
Yeah.
I got fired from my job. I got fired from my job on D-Day.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, on D-Day, June 6th.
That's un-American.
Got fired from my job that day. I kind of took it with grace. I was like, you know what? God's like, I got something for you. I'm like, okay, bro, I got you. Like, what? I don't
how
know
it
what I'm
works.
supposed to be doing, but okay. You know, and I was married at the time. I got my unemployment check. Things are going along. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sign up for barber school. I was already kind of looking at barber school, and my unemployment ran out. My wife at the time decided to divorce me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a shit show. Like,
Yeah, it's going downhill quick.
storm is coming.
That's called a quicksand moment.
And I'm in barber school, and I remember I'm having a conversation with my mom, and I'm like, I'm losing it. I am. I'm like, I'm at the lowest of my low. I'm smoking cigarettes. I'm drinking every night. I'm staying up till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, can't sleep, insomnia. Like, I'm depressed. I'm depressed as shit. And I just remember telling my mom, I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I gotta get the fuck out of here. And I had a good friend of mine who lived in Colorado Springs, where Pikes Peak is at, and he invited me up, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going. And I took my kids, and we went up there and spent a little bit after Christmas and New Year's Eve up there. And I was just kind of just trying to recharge. And the whole way I was driving up there, I was still promoting 22 kills. So in my lowest point, I was still trying to raise awareness for other people because I felt like it was important. Like, I needed to still do those things.
Yeah.
What's up, Brad?
How you doing, bud?
And in that, it gave me an outlet to put that negative energy into something positive.
Yeah, and that's a key point that you're bringing up because, like, you know, you have guidons in the military, right? You rally around that, and then when you're on movement, you got rally points, designated areas where you stop, or if something bad happens, you revert back to, and that's where everybody gets back to. They reassess, you check on each other, you check on your condition, your equipment, and your ammo, and then you decide if you're going to proceed forward or do something different. So I commend you for having the strength to even do that, because that's the hardest part of this topic that we're talking about is someone that's willing to, it's an ugly thing to face, and it's not easy to swallow. But once you find yourself in that quicksand moment and then you have something to rally to, having that mental strength, or that, I call it a survival mechanism,
Yeah.
to try to get back to. And that's that leap, that task, that step that mental health needs to focus on before people really start talking and getting into the therapy and the counseling and the education on the topic. It's that leap that's the hardest leap, because once you make it, the journey gets stronger, the journey gets harder, but once you find something to rally around, it kind of gets easier. So you bring up a good point, man.
So in that photo, I'm on top of Pikes Peak. So you could kind of say I was in a mountaintop moment, but I was truly
I see
in
what
the
you did
valley.
there. Yeah.
I was truly in the valley. I was completely in darkness. And I did 22 push-ups up there on the mountain. It was 65-mile-an-hour wind. It was negative 5-degree wind chill. I'm out here in freaking American flag silkies and doing these push-ups, and so many people were like, can we get a picture with you? Can we hang out with you? I'm like, I wasn't really doing it for any kind of, like, look at me. I was doing it to try to raise awareness for veterans and support the cause. And out of that came some healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
and help me grow. So that is why I chose this picture for my coffee. A lot of people were like, oh man, that's such a stupid photo, but it's like I literally was at the darkest point in my life as of recent, and turned it into a positive. Like, I have my own barbershop now. I have my own coffee line. Like, I'm trying to make progress forward. Like, I turned a negative into a positive, and I thought that would be a great way to share that
No, I think
is on my coffee.
I didn't know we've known each other for years, and I'm a big drinker of your coffee, and I didn't know that was the reasoning behind the picture or what that picture meant. I saw the picture, and I'm like, that's Dustin.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I did 22 push-ups in Walmart. I literally walked into Walmart just like that. American flag silkies, no shirt,
In Colorado?
and nobody gave a shit. No, here in Midlothian.
Oh, no, that's a Saturday morning, dude.
It's like, I got the video. I should share it again. When it comes up on my time hop, I'll share it. But there's a lady in the background. It's an old lady. She's like shopping, and she's like, what is even going on? And there's another lady that is coming down the aisle at me, and I see her, and she doesn't even break stride. She doesn't crack a smile. She doesn't nothing. She just like stone cold me. It's right past me. It's a good time though.
These people.
But let's get on to talking about mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
No, and I like that you brought up how we met, because that was a very similar moment for me. So I remember I was promoting a little apparel line I was trying to launch at the time, and I met Tank.
Mixing up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I need to bring that back, I think.
Yeah.
But I was pushing forward to do something like we brought up earlier, something to rally behind, a guidon of sorts, a rally point of sorts, and try to get to something that I felt that, I had the job. It was a typical Instagram situation, right? Everything's going great. The feed looks good. I'm happy in my pictures. Life can't beat any better. Behind the scenes, numbers aren't enough. Production's not enough. Value that I'm trying to, I envision accomplishing for my family, not enough. Everything wasn't enough. And I was like, even though at work, I was top of the board, in my reserve unit, I was one of the top, and it was just one of those moments where I realized later that I was burying myself in my work and I wasn't facing some hard truths.
Yeah.
And on
You're
that
using that as
hike,
your coping mechanism.
yeah, exactly what it is. And when I went on that hike, all I remember is my feet hurt, my back hurt. We were loaded down. We were walking with people. People were singing cadence. People were double timing it. We met. We met at, I think, mile like 3, and we walked the rest of the time together.
Yep.
And I remember looking down, and your feet were all bloody. And I was like, man, you didn't pick the right shoes for this. And you're like, I didn't think it through. But you didn't stop, and you didn't quit. And I knew right then that's the kind of guy I want to be a pal with.
Yeah.
And
you weren't even living in the same town or anything. Like, I lived in Midlothian. I don't know where you were.
I was North Mansfield at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, so that hike, it kind of did the same thing for me. And then I started looking into, mental health, TBI awareness, what a TBI is, suicide in general.
Yeah.
And started just researching anybody that was involved, vetting them out, and reaching out to people trying to verify, the vetting process. And then I just felt good and comfortable with that organization and been with it ever since.
Yeah.
And I respect for what you're doing here, bringing up mental health as a topic on your podcast, because I've seen you take this journey. I remember on the hike you were talking about going to barber school, going to own you literally talked about this place, and you wanted more in a barbershop. You wanted a place someone could come to and let out and just be themselves, could step outside the norm. You're accepted when you come here. It's a true barbershop. And then this whole vision, and I remember the first day I walked in when you opened this place, I was like, man, he did it. He did it. And I watched you do the whole progress and the whole process. And so when I started my entrepreneurship journey, you were one of the first people I reached out to.
Yeah, man.
Remember I called you and said, hey, I've done this business for 12 years. I'm making a change. It's nothing what I do now.
I do remember having these conversations. You were like on the fence. I'm like, fuck it, just do it.
You were. And I believe the people that were involved that I'm still friends with and partners with to this day, and people I get to work with, I don't regret a moment of it. But it was that leap moment for me that I referenced earlier.
It's scary. It's so scary. But once you get on the other side, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Actually, life.
Yeah, you look back. And
so I worked at a cement plant for about 10 years, and everybody used to joke around like, there's life on the other side of the gate. So we had to go through a security gate to get into the plant. And they're like, there's life on the other side. And it's like, but you couldn't see it. You had that comfort, that security of having this day in, day out job. And you had this, every 2 weeks paycheck. And you couldn't see it. And it was so scary to like, oh, shit, I'm gonna roll the dice. Here we go. Like the house always wins in Vegas. Like you never get an opportunity to beat the house. And man, I encourage anyone that ever wants to do anything, like just be an entrepreneur, be your own boss, do your own thing. It's the greatest experience you'll ever have in your life. It's gonna test you, but it's worth it.
Yeah, at that moment, it's a fail, no fail situation. And we talk about this a lot at Quick. It's like, let's try something new. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work, but we learn something.
Yeah.
You know, but in mental health, it's the same way.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many resources. There's ways to adjust. There's ways to look into the situation. But it takes a long time to identify, all right, something's not syncing up here.
And speaking of identify, I like this key point right here. An average delay between symptom onset and treatment is 11 years. That's wild.
And it's increased to a shorter time frame. I should have said that decreased since the pandemic. Mental health trauma, suicide, and even people realizing, going through those procedures and processes, they realize, oh man, I actually suffered a TBI at one point. The pandemic's changed the game. Now's the time to double down on this topic.
I really do. I'm curious to see actual numbers of. We had a lot of people die from COVID, but I'm wondering how many people took their life during COVID because of being isolated. Like, at first I was okay with it, and granted, I seem like a person that's like full of energy and like excitement and stuff like that. But deep down, like at my house, I can be an introvert like nobody's business. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to do anything. And I found myself in slippery slopes as far as like being home alone. My wife was in New York at the time helping with the whole COVID thing, and I'm here by myself and not being engaged with people daily at the barbershop. I found myself in some deep waters. Like,
and
wow.
Yeah, to your point, fundamental 101, human beings as a species, we're not a singularity. We're meant to be in packs.
Yeah, no, we're meant to be tribes.
This is a fact, and that's something we'll never get away from and shouldn't even try. And I want to say that I kind of understood at the time the quarantine mindset. But I think it went too long, too far, and too extreme. And when certain numbers, which in our world where data is so accessible, everything's right now. And that's another thing on the mental health topic. I mean, there's some other studies out there that talks about how adolescent minds are working now versus when we grew up. Because of the availability of so much information at once, your mind processes mass information in different ways versus if you took it in increments. So when you have 7 different social media feeds, a TV show, friends, family, work, church, social constructs, and then you put all that and then you rip it away for whatever reason, isolation is not a good thing.
No, it's definitely not healthy. And you know, when I got fired from my job, that was the first time I ever went to Celebrate Recovery. And, you know, Celebrate Recovery is not for everybody. It's a faith-based recovery group. But it helped me just really unpack some stuff and just fix myself and work on some things as far as like abandonment issues, fear of rejection, things like that, like codependency. I didn't know I was codependent. I really had to like figure those things out to understand myself and my habits that I would form from these abandonment issues. And those abandonment issues, especially and also too like fear of rejection, like it puts you to the point to being extreme. Like, oh yeah, you know, we got to do like 3 lines of coke to be cool. Let's do it. Like you want to be accepted by people, and you would really push yourself to the limit as far as just risking things. It was just dangerous waters, and I'm thankful that I found Celebrate Recovery to help me at least get my life somewhat in order and give me the tools to take on day-to-day things to where I'm not getting my ass handed to me, that I don't have a resource or a tool or accountability partner to reach out to and talk to.
Yeah, and you bring up a valid point, the accountability partner thing, like to our topic earlier about just isolation in general. That's the best way to describe it. So I've had moments where I was surrounded by family, friends, both in service, out of service, know me for years, know me for 6 months. And I can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone. But you never know what kind of moment someone's having or day.
Oh, dude.
But
You
when
never know
someone
what kind
feels
of war they're in.
mentally isolated, that's where it gets tough. And I've been there. Like I said, everything was going good on the surface, and I allowed myself to not face the realities of what I was looking at. So I looked in the mirror one day, and I recognized myself, but I didn't recognize myself. And I told myself, and it's something I literally said to myself every day, is look in the mirror and ask yourself 2 questions. One, do I know who I'm looking at, and do I like what I'm looking at? And if you can't answer both with a yes, then dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, there's more reflection than that mirror provides. We have the availability out of all God's creations to have the ability to learn ourselves and actually be able to create disciplines to change ourselves. But the mind is the universe that we still haven't fully discovered.
Yeah.
And when it comes to mental health and when it comes to the disciplinary measures that have to go in place, having an accountability partner, like you mentioned with Celebrate Recovery, that is a key fundamental aspect, hence the rally point situation, hence the guide on the 22 kill.
Yeah.
And that's where, with our team, we preach this almost daily, but you ask your first question out of your mouth is, how you doing? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
That's the first thing you ask, because we have to make that a habit as a human to ask that question. And then they'll open up or they won't. But you took the first step, and you'll probably take that step 90 more times before they start letting you in.
Yeah.
You just got to have the diligence.
You got to build that trust.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you say that. Like, there's a documentary, well, not documentary. It's called Atlas to the Heart. It's by Brene Brown.
Never heard of it.
It's a series on HBO that kind of breaks down not so much mental health, but it talks about like compassion, empathy. Like, she breaks down the words and what those things mean and how you use those words in conversation. And that one thing right there, when she was talking about compassion and stuff like that, she says, sometimes in compassion we will try to control the situation and control the person versus like, how can I be a help to you right now? Like, let that person tell you, like, hey, give me 10 minutes to just get my thoughts together and try to work through these things. One of the quotes she read on here is, only when you know your darkness will you be able to be present with darkness in others.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about that, like, if once you process kind of like your darkness and you've kind of been in that dark spot, like, you recognize those things in other people and you're able to engage with them a lot quicker and sooner than, I think there's actually a little symptoms thing right here on the stuff we got.
Yeah.
There is signs of mental health, warning signs of mental illness.
And to your point, what you're bringing up, like, that's what I liked about what you mentioned earlier about, post your darkest moment or your lowest moment. And that thing went viral.
Mm-hmm.
That showed me that I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of people willing to talk about this, but what's the construct, what's the framework, and how are you going to get people to openly say, I'm having a hard time, or I've went through something, or I'm hurting?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. There's some evolution things in there that we'll always be defensive with, because you feel that's the most vulnerable you can be, legitimately. And
also, out of Brene Brown, one of her quotes that she says is, out of vulnerability comes courage.
yeah,
And when she said that, it really resonated with me. Like, being vulnerable people, like, I've known from being in Celebrate Recovery, and you get into these small groups. You're in large group first, and you go to small groups, and you're sitting by like, man, I don't have anything going on with me. And then you hear a person have enough courage and them to talk about their issues, and you're like, man, I can truly relate to this guy. And it just prompts you to start sharing. Like, once you hear that you're not alone in this shit, like, it's a lot easier to share. And I promise you, mental illness is a major, major problem in the United States. I've actually had to deal with it recently with a family member of mine, and I was blown away, dude, when they trying to get help for my loved one, and they tell me, well, we need $5,000 right now before we can even do anything. And I'm like, are you shitting me right now? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not saying I don't have $5,000, but it's like, what if you don't have $5,000? Now this person's getting turned away from any kind of help, and you're just having to tell your loved one, like, well, piss on you. Like, we're just going to go to the house and eat ramen noodles, and hopefully you don't kill yourself. Like, what kind of messed up shit is that? Like, you have no support. Like, you're reaching out for help and asking for help, and this is what you get, $5,000 to even get to the next level. And it's like, what is this, Super Mario? And I twisted off on the lady, and she's like, well, you don't really have to pay the $5,000. I was like, okay. What if someone doesn't have enough boldness to push the boundaries and say some stuff and get pissed off to where you, like, send them to the next level? Like,
Yeah, and there's actually, to your point, there's actually it was in the works by the previous administration. 988 would become the national, like 911, but for mental health trauma, suicidal
it's
thoughts.
a serious problem, man.
And it's still in the works because that infrastructure is massive. But you almost have to do what's happened in the space race in the past 10 years. You have to go private with it, or nonprofit with it, I should say. And you need to double down on your logistics and your infrastructure and help, because that's the biggest thing. It's such a broad topic. I think society and people are ready to talk about it as a whole, especially coming out of the pandemic. And they're looking to what's next. Where do I go? What do I do? What are my symptoms? Who do I talk to? What is my availability of resources to be able to allocate time and energy?
Tattoo shop to the back. You can.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you already went that way.
Yeah. But the thing is to cut to the point, to the name of the podcast is you simply have to go on like a, and it's there's other resources, but like I said earlier when I mentioned my vetting process, that's the problem. Someone shouldn't feel like they have to take 2 seconds and verify if where they're reaching out to is credible or not. And there's ways to do it, and the resources you pulled from, the NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, that's a good resource to directly go to immediately.
Yeah.
And then they will help direct from there resources locally, and they'll dig in and ask you some questions. But I'm praying and hoping for the 988 thing to go live,
Dude.
and I've got some ideas on that. The quick team and myself, we have ideas on that, on how to do something with that topic. And when someone feels isolated, they feel dark, and they feel low, they tend to shut down. I've been there, and they don't really want to talk about it. And that's where they can have the safest environment and feel welcome and still not want to talk about it. So you have to be able to know the person and be willing to be diligent to dig in.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you something. I did know this person. I went and worked on the Cutting Horse Ranch that he worked on. I rodeoed with his brother. And I've said this before, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but, Chris Kyle's life was taken, but I really don't think it was taken in vain. I think what he was striving to do and expose really got brought to the surface when he got taken out by a veteran that had mental issues. I think the sacrifice and the loss of his life really brought a lot of veteran issues to the surface that he was working on. I think it would have taken him probably years to accomplish what happened whenever he got his life taken. I think it really just fast-forwarded it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it took that way because him and his organization and the many things that he was elevating and bringing to light and talking about, that's the problem. Is it takes something like that to leave someone so great and so precious and honestly irreplaceable.
And he was an awesome dude. Like
huge fan, always will be.
And I knew him whenever, because he grew up. Well, he was born in Odessa, but he lived here in Midlothian. They owned a feed store here in town. I rodeoed with his brother Jeff through high school, and that's how I met Chris. He's definitely was a big brother. He would bully us and be mean to us. But once I reconnected with him when his book was starting to take off, still a humble, great guy. Definitely missed. But I think his life was not wasted on the cause. I think what he was trying to do really got exposed quickly.
And I don't disagree with him passing and the way he was taken from us. That definitely slingshotted because everybody wants a drama story. And unfortunately, it was involved with that. And so once everyone realized and digged in the cause and the individual and what the individual was struggling with, it came to light. And that itself, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly the exact topic, how people feel in general. If I bring this up, if I talk about this, if I expose myself, my world will literally explode.
Yeah.
And because there's emotions in there that you've buried down. I mean, like I said, we referenced the time frame. I think it's like 8 years now since the resurvey, since the pandemic, on a mental trauma, TBI, something that caused a mental health issue or mental illness. It takes a little bit longer for that person for it to come to fruition because our internal instinct, and there's actually studies on this, you will subconsciously bury a memory, and you won't even know you did it. It's gone. It's in a little vault, and over time, as you mature and grow, depending on the age of your trauma or the event that caused the trauma, it takes a while for that mind to let it go. And that's a survival mechanism. That's how we compartmentalize different exposures to traumatic events. So my whole rant is what you just explained and how you brought it up. That's exactly what people feel like if you're going to bring up the topic, if you're going to expose yourself. I remember sitting down in front of my wife, and I said, babe, I love what I do, but I'm hurting. I'm hurting bad. There's something wrong. There's something not right. This is not the life I envisioned overseas. This is not what I fought so hard to come back to. And brothers and sisters in arms paid for, so we were one of the fortunate ones to come back. And I'm hurting. And she looked at me and she said, I understand. And she said, I've seen it. I've tried to support you. And she started breaking down crying. And that's when it hit me. That I had something in me, darkness, as you reference it.
Yeah.
And it was impacting so many people around me, especially my closest loved ones. And later my friends told me, you haven't been the same for a year. But they never treated me different. And I asked them why years later. And I said, why didn't you make me aware? They were like, what would that have done? How would you have felt?
Yeah.
I was like, I would have told you I don't fucking need your sympathy. And they'd be like, what would you say now? I'll tell them, thank you for recognizing it. I'm on it. It's because I'm prepared to face the facts.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it takes life-altering scenarios to be involved with, exposed to, for someone to breach this topic like we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, man. It's an ugly thing.
Let's talk about some of the signs.
Yeah.
Feeling very sad and withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. Oof. I feel like that right there is like that's the pandemic lockdown right there. Like that, I'm sure that triggered so many people.
Oh, absolutely. And then you got to dig into that. That each one of these topics, they're great bullet points, but you got to dig into them. And I ask people, like, if we have someone that says they're not feeling a part of the team, or anybody in my life that I just don't feel accepted. Well, why? How people treating you? Is it where you work?
It's so hard sometimes to be patient with people and like get information out of them to try to help them. A lot of times people will definitely avoid answering like hard topic questions.
Yeah, and I respect it. I respect the crap out of that, to be honest with you, because sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the strongest person. Mm-hmm. On this topic, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. this is the topic of all topics that you need to let it out, talk about it. And it takes a lot of backbone to face those. The other point, trying to harm or end one's life or making plans to do so, that is a topic that, that should be the first bullet, in my opinion, because, people joke about it. I myself sometimes just make a joke, and I shouldn't, especially I have friends and family that have suffered through things that involve
Man,
that.
I've had somebody recently, probably about 3 weeks ago, committed suicide, and I honestly never would have thought he would have done that.
And that's the one thing is you don't know what's beneath the surface.
Yeah, dude.
And the other thing is too is the human survival instinct to hold on to it. If you just look up Psychology 101, it will brief the topic. There's reasons for it, and that's where I think society as a whole is doing what you're doing with the podcast. Needs to just get out there and talk about it. People that you wouldn't think would, right? Celebrities, big entrepreneurs, people have elevated the veteran entrepreneurship game that are involved. But get out there and talk about it just a little more, and just expose the fact and make it more comfortable for everyone to talk about it. Because, the military I grew up in, they've taken this topic extremely serious in the past 20 years. They've doubled down the past decade, and right now it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And that's because they've realized, we're causing harm to our service members. That we're
Again,
not
like I say, I think Chris's death was not in vain. It really brought
never in a million years
that to the surface, and I'm going to continue to say that. I think his
And-
role
and
in this
anyone-
was very important.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine what the family and friends and close ones to him feel, but someone that, I read his book, and I watched his movie, and I've been a fan of his before he was. I heard. I'm in the Army.
Yeah.
He's a Navy SEAL sniper, taking care of Marines, and every other branch you could think of. And his reputation, I knew about it before I knew who he was.
Yeah.
Throughout the military. And anyone that served with him talks about the man's how he carried himself on mission. He was the most selfless person you could ever think about. And when you have multiple
And
branches
that's a
talking the
perfect
same
word.
way,
I feel like the loss of his life was a selfless act.
yeah, no,
And he's probably saving more veterans than he would have being alive and having this book and having a movie and things like that. Like, the loss of his life brought so much awareness to the surface. It was I feel it was unreal.
I think he was starting to hit his stride, and the man accomplished things that no one else had.
Yeah.
So I would have loved to be in the world to see him fulfill his dream and goals. I would have loved to see that. But
Yeah.
that third topic where it says out of control, severe, no reason, heart rate, physical discomfort, or difficulty breathing. That there's a lot of anxiety discussion in that one.
Yeah.
And again, post-pandemic, like I'm gonna keep saying it, people need to talk about it more. And even if you know that you're 100%, right, you're good to go to the game, still talk about it. Make it known that everyone can, until society does what a trend did and make it okay to push forward more, people will continue to have people that feel isolated no matter what.
Yeah. Suddenly overwhelming fear for no reason. Sometimes with a racing heart, physical discomfort, or difficult breathing. I think this definitely ties into like anxiety. Man, they're having a good time back there.
There they are.
I'm not gonna say I was definitely overwhelmed today. Like, Patrick leaving, Cody got into an accident. He's not here. Delaney's his girlfriend. Delaney went to go get him after his accident. So it's like now we're 3 hands down, and it's just me and Paige, and not everybody got notified about their appointments being canceled. It was just like, man, I was just getting overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my God, this is starting to get stressed out. And I'm a pretty calm, cool, collected person, but man, today definitely pushed me to the limit. I was like, what the hell is even going on right now in the barbershop? Like, Lucky's Cuts is not so lucky today. It's getting punched right into the face.
That's when the grit came in, dude.
Golly,
Well,
dude.
and that's the other thing too, resiliency. So you double down. When I came in here and we were getting ready to shoot, you were still cutting people, and there's people waiting, which is a testament to the business and culture you built here. And you didn't, and the way you just described it, you know, as a business owner, you didn't say it with any, there's no angry tones in your voice. You accepted what they had to handle.
Yeah, man.
You appreciated from Patrick to the unfortunate situation, and you mentally processed it, did it, and then, you know, we'll have a couple cold ones after the podcast, and we'll talk about how the heck it got pulled off. You know, it's because you faced the darkness and you've been in it before, and then once you do that, there's really nothing else that can't hurt. You know, that you can't take on. That's how I feel now. Like,
No, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Once you have kind of met your demons and you know, like, the score, you're like, you know, you can still be here and you can hang out and we can be best buds, but, you know, I'm not going to always buy your line of shit. I'm not always going to give in to your temptations. Like, I know how far you're going to take me, and if you can stop that before it gets there, and you can recognize those things. And I think that's another thing, too, is just, like, recognizing things, setting boundaries with people, places, things, trigger points, like what's going to trigger you into a relapse moment. Even in Celebrate Recovery, the last step in the 12-step is, you know, be mindful of helping your brother, because it can cause you to relapse also. So, you know, you're extending this helping hand, but it can also be a helping hand to pull you down. You got to be mindful of those things. And I definitely think setting boundaries with people and stuff like that is very important.
And to your point there, so speaking of TikTok that we referenced earlier, there's a couple life influencers I follow, a select few on TikTok, and one of them, she's just got good energy. My wife and I both follow her, and she went on TikTok and she said, I'm going to bring something up. And normally her stuff's real light, it's real comedic, but it touches some topics in a very creative way. She said, if you go to a nightclub or someone that requires a cover charge, you know you have to pay the $20 to get in,
Yeah.
to do what you want to do. As an individual, what is your $20? So set those boundaries, to your point. Set those boundaries with those individuals. Make a checklist of what you require before you let somebody in. And I loved and I shared the crap out of that. And I sent it to one of the One Tribe Foundation members, and I said, this is a phenomenal way that this topic, and I don't know if that's what she meant, but one first thing, and maybe this because this is my number one priority in the morning outside of praying, is talking to myself about what's my mental health condition today.
Yeah.
And the way she brought that up was setting boundaries. It made me do all this other research. You know, there's studies about, you know, you're not an addict. Okay, put your phone away for 5 minutes. Tell me you're not an addict. There's stuff like that, and that's another broad topic. But the way she brought that up to set boundaries, and on that set boundaries point, and I'll hand it back to you, is that is how you have to ask yourself if you're trying to help somebody. Know thyself is a common term. Learn their boundaries first, and then approach with help. Don't rush right in. You cannot do that. They go defensive, and if they'll let you know subconsciously or consciously, they'll let you know. And if you're empathetic and compassionate, like you said, you've educated yourself enough, you'll know when it's the time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Me, I bring up me first. Not trying to be selfish, and not that I'm a me person. I'm very much a we person. But I will expose things about myself.
Yeah, to make them comfortable and feel
Right.
like, you know, like you can trust me in these conversations and things like that. Brene Brown definitely mentioned in that empathy and compassion. We set boundaries because we're not able to express what we really need.
Yeah, that's a good point. Never looked at
So-
boundaries that way.
Sometimes we're not able to express what we need in words, so we just set boundaries to help people understand like what we're needing, even though we can't voice it. And boundaries are very important.
Yeah, and once you take time to respect or learn someone, study them enough, especially if you feel like they're struggling or they're hurting, learn the boundaries and then respect those boundaries no matter who they are, what their life is, and what level they're at. Respect those boundaries with tact, right? And then approach the situation
You know, for me, whenever I first started setting boundaries, I didn't really know what the hell a boundary was. Like, what is a boundary? Like, what do you do? How do you know that you need to set boundaries? And for me, I kind of had to learn, like, what made me uncomfortable or what did I not dislike that I couldn't voice to this person. So I needed to set a boundary with them so they would understand, like, hey, when you start talking about this or you start pushing me this, whether it's making me feel guilty about something I did or didn't do, like expressing those things and being aware enough to where, like, those things make me uncomfortable. Like, don't do that. That's a boundary. That's how you set boundaries, is things that make you uncomfortable, that sometimes it's hard for you to express, but you know it in your heart. As soon as it happens, you're like, oh.
Well, you have to, no pun intended, but
How do you
I cut to the point.
figure out what a boundary is for you?
I learned that, to your point, with I went through this whole, I call it, I'm going to learn you. I would say this to myself, I'm going to learn myself more. And then I realized I had things that I considered a boundary were more a comfortability defensive mechanism,
Yeah.
more than a set boundary for myself.
Okay.
And then once I took the time to study myself, and that was a lot through prayer, talks with my wife, and close battle buddies that I'm friends with to this day and still work with to this day. I consider you one of those people. Learning to, I'm going to tighten up my circle, and then I'm going to let it all out. And they stay or they go.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be rough around the edges. I'm going to be the guy that will have your back no matter. And then 2 seconds later, I'll be asking you, why didn't you do something I asked you to do? Because you ask me to do something, I say I'm going to do it, I give it my all, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So my boundary I've learned, and most of these boundaries, and this may not be the healthiest on this podcast to talk about, I set boundaries with myself first, to your point. I set internal discipline measures to set internal boundaries that once I could recognize those boundaries what were I was bypassing that were triggering things that I had to face later on this mental health topic. And then I realized some of this other stuff I was doing, keeping people at a distance, quick to be defensive in a situation, especially if I feel like I'm in quicksand. Everybody's an enemy for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And even my wife, I'll look at her and be like, what's your agenda? What are you trying to do? You trying to flank me on something? And she's like, what are you talking about? and I'm like, what's your motive? And she's like,
I just want to know if we can get some Taco Bell or
yeah.
not.
I'm just asking why you're 10 minutes late. When I'm late, you say something. But to your point is, the way I learnified what a boundary was learning to set some to myself, with myself. And then I realized I need to put up a few and I need to take down a few.
Yeah.
For my social construct with my.
Yeah, because there's some stuff that's like unrealistic. You
not
always
healthy.
feel like you always feel like you're being attacked or barraged, and it's like, okay, no, this is unrealistic. You can't always just be on the defensive, ready to punch people in the face.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we talked about earlier with the mind situation, how it's considered a universe. When I started studying mental health, mental illness, TBI awareness, I have 2 close friends that suffer from TBIs. It made me really evaluate, and through that study, I realized, I'm about 9 of those 10 things. And 2 years ago, I'd have looked at you and said, not me, I'm a rock, man.
Yeah, man, denials.
But then I watched these 2 individuals take strides and growth, and they had this FU mentality. They're like, this is not going to beat me anymore.
Yeah.
And they did it with a decision. They just decided, and then a shit ton of work. And their journey has helped me so much, and that's where I feel like it made me want to talk about it more, because I've witnessed firsthand both going through it myself, because I'll say it publicly, right around 4 years ago, and I'll say it, 4 years ago, I pulled my pistol out, I cleaned it, I got it ready, and I was just doing it to, my thing, keep my weapon at the ready. But at that moment, I looked at it for about 2 seconds, and I was like, and it scared the shit out of me. The next day, my wife And 2 of my closest friends called me, and they said, "Are you okay?" "Oh, what are you talking about?" And they said, "You sent me some text last night that didn't make sense."
Yeah.
I don't remember doing that, and I wasn't drinking. And that's when I realized 4 years ago, oh shit. At that point, I felt everything was good. I felt everything was okay. But realistically, looking back now, I was about 30% ready for a fight of any kind, mentally, because I had set up these barriers. I'll just call them defensive mechanisms to myself, and I buried all those deep thoughts. But what pulled me out of that was looking at it. I thought about it. The next day I talked to him. The first thing I did was I reached out to 22 Kill and said, "Do y'all have anything going on? I want to support something."
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, we're having an event. We need help." I went out there and worked the whole weekend and just ran water to people. Didn't even participate in it. I wanted to work for it. I wanted to serve. And ever since then, I've been quietly, and you give me a chance to do this, I really want to talk about this as much as possible at any platform I can. And I hope it's a more one-on-one conversation than anything. But, I honestly never admitted that moment till just now.
Wow.
But that's a true statement, dude. And I will tell you, looking back at it, I identified exactly what my triggers were, and I got rid of them.
Yeah.
I changed everything about my life. We moved. I
Is
changed
that why you
careers.
moved Midlothian?
Part of it.
Yeah, because it's about 4 years ago.
It was 5 years ago I moved to Midlothian.
Okay.
But the reason I say I knew that was one of the reasons I made a decision was I wanted to start fresh. Even though it was 5 years ago I moved, year 4, it hit me. Last year I realized the real reason we moved, we were happy. We were in a great home. We had a good thing going on. It was a massive project. It was causing stress in our lives, but it was a financial jump for us, and looking back at it, we could have cleared triple what we did. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah.
Because our entire life elevated after that move. So looking back at the timeline, breaking it down, studying myself, studying my why, I realized it was all of that. It was
We live our life forward and understand it backward.
a fact. That's exactly how it works. Hence 10 to 12 years.
Whenever I heard that when I was in a spiritual retreat with my church, I was like, whoa.
Powerful message.
You go through these journeys in life and you go through these struggles and you're like, why am I going through all this bullshit? What is this even about? And then you finally get to that point in your life and you're like, oh, okay, I need to learn X, Y, Z to get to the end so I can have this resource, this tool, this idea, these friends, these people around me to be successful. Like God was guiding you the whole time, whether you were walking with him or not. But when I heard that you live your life forward and you understand it backward, I was like, wow, that makes complete sense.
It does. Everything in life is that way, unfortunately. And the one thing I would bring up too is something you brought up earlier. I love that you brought it up, is the whole entrepreneurship thing. And right now, that's all over social media. Why are you working for the clock? The house.
What do they call
wins.
it? The Great Resignation? Is it what they call it?
It's an awakening. What's happening? But here's what I would recommend. And I love the fact that you brought it up. But here's what I'd recommend to anybody seriously doing it: side hobby, full-time, dream job, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to study and use it as a business investment. If you want to start and run and eventually properly lead a company, an organization, you need to study mental health, because there's a dark side of entrepreneurship that's not on TikTok, Instagram, and these conferences.
Yeah. No, definitely educate yourself in a vast amount of stuff if
Because
you're going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and that's something else. I mean, I've watched you build this place, and everything was stacked against you. Everything. And you pushed through, and you always adapted. And we went through our journey in business with the Quick team. And, for a long time, it started out, there was a few of us, then it went down to 2 of us. And this is mid-COVID.
Yeah.
And businesses are shut down. No one's able to work. I'm not able to see the people I work with. I'm not able to engage with customers. I'm in sales. I have to have interaction with people, not from the financial gain, because I enjoy human-to-human experience. This right here this is better than sitting on a beach, in my opinion. This is where it's at. Talking about something that people don't talk about as much, but facing the facts that I realized I was on my island. Now, I had a guy I could call all the time. I had my wife, I had my friends, but I had one dude I could call no matter what, and he would pick up, or he would text me, call you right back. And this dude always called me back. And he was always there for me. And I would tell him, I'm in a mental rut, I'm stuck, my wheels are turning,
Yeah.
and I can't mentally dig myself out of it. And because at this point in time, I'm what I would consider becoming more self-awake, I started to understand my own thought process, hence the gun situation. And I realized, so what I did is I said, when I get in these moments, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call 3 people.
It's so hard, though.
But I realized something. I sit my wife down, tell her I'm hurting. She starts crying and said she's noticed it. My friends aren't telling me because they're scared to alert me because I'm so defensive, just in nature as a person, plus everything else I've been through in life. But everyone has a journey and a story to tell, but it's the point to get to where you can allow yourself to tell your story. So you pick your platform, you set your boundaries, and you go for it. And get off my soapbox there, but it's a point I was trying to make basically is when you face the facts and you start listening to the music, you're not going to like what you see or hear at first.
Yeah.
And we both know that. And there are times where, to this day, I schedule appointments with you off the whim, randomly, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time, it's always about a week or 2 before reserve duty, or if I have a big business meeting or I'm presenting something to the partnership team, or I need to have a heart-to-heart with our quick team, I will come get a haircut from you because this has become one of my safe boundaries to come to, and I can talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
And you give me honest, brotherly feedback, and you never have a judgmental tone. And that is why I think whatever you decide to do with this podcast, I'm behind. But as much as you push this, I'm always going to find a way to help because I love the fact that you're taking this on. A lot of people that are launching a podcast or doing a podcast will stay away from certain points, not you. And I respect the heck out of that.
So when I got fired from my job, God spoke to me then, and he was like, I got something for you. And I didn't really know what that meant. And I really feel like the barbershop has become kind of like my ministry. It's a place for me to connect. It's a place for me to have conversation. We don't have any TVs. We don't have any distractions other than some music. But I've had so many in-depth conversations with people, whether it's they've just lost a loved one, they're going through a divorce, they're having marital troubles, whatever it is. And I've been able to listen to them. I've been able to support them. It's been incredible. I love my job. I can't say any more. It's a good time having conversations with people. I enjoy seeing their faces. COVID was definitely a difficult time not having people around and just hanging out with them. But that's what this barbershop's all about. It's just being able to decompress and unwind and you couldn't imagine how many. I know for a fact I was cutting one veteran's hair and another veteran's sitting on the couch, and he doesn't know how to get his disability. He's at 75%, and he's like, man, I need 100%. I got all this, and that, and the guy's like, oh, we just called this lawyer and blah blah blah. Literally, the dude took his advice, and 6 weeks later, he's got 100%. It was wild, just like that.
Yeah. The camaraderie behind it all.
Going on back there.
It's supposed to be a tattoo shop, Dustin. I don't know.
Right now, I don't even
probably
know.
A painful spot. Yeah. That's a rib cage if I'm willing to bet, or the collarbone. But to your point is you found a way to hone in on your thing. Like, I've known you for years, and I can't think of one thing, and I'm not just saying this, but I can't think of one thing that you wouldn't decide to take on and you wouldn't be fucking phenomenal at. It's just the person you are, and you've got some discipline, you got faith, you have, and this true patriotic, you know, the kind of mindset that you're going to tax us on tea, we'll start a revolution.
Heck yeah.
I mean, that's in our blood, right? So,
I was actually talking to Paige today. I was like, I really feel like I missed my calling. I should have been in the military. Son of a bitch.
Nah, I think I would say what you're doing now and what you've been doing since I've known you.
I'm drawn to the veterans for whatever reason. Like, I'm just drawn to the veterans. Like, I get it.
Yeah. No, and that's the one thing too is, like, I think to your point with Tank and even Mr. Chris Kyle is they started to break boundaries between the whole veteran civilian construct. Like, everyone felt like it was that ain't the case, man. And you know,
no, but you're wrong though. I mean, it is hard. It's hard to get inside that circle of brotherhood and sisterhood.
I'm not going to debate that. I'm not going to debate that.
And I felt like whenever I went on that hike, I felt like I was accepted into this like elite circle, and I'm like, these people actually like me, and I fucking like them, and I have a good time, and we have this fucked up dark sense of humor, and it's okay.
Yeah, no,
touch each other's buttholes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the dark humor stuff. Well, then that's how. Well, honestly, people, and dark humor is something I wish was. It should never get canceled, and I'm going to say that word strongly, because that is a way that I think any human being, especially vets, that's how we deal with stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can only compartmentalize so long.
No, and you need to let it out. But we created this thing called dark humor. And it is a great area to be sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to be careful, mindful where you're at. But at the same time, if you're amongst brothers and sisters, let it go. The reason you were embraced so quickly is because there's a difference in talking about it and then doing something about it. You got out there with the wrong type of shoes and your feet were bloody. But, you know, I watched you get ripped apart. And that's actually how I saw you for the first time, was I heard them just ripping you apart, dude. And then I walked up next to you, and I could tell you were like, fuck, I let these people down. And I remember what I told you. I said, hey, just carry it higher than anybody else out here. They'll respect you for it. And that's, I mean, dude, for almost 10 miles, I remember you basically held it here.
Yeah.
And everyone noticed that. And then when the event was done, you were checking on people. You were taking people bottles of water. We call that leading from the front. Or the term follow me is you get out there and you just do something about it.
Yeah.
But you're right. It takes a lot to break into the circle. It's because we had to put in stuff. And even within the military organizations, there's still subcultures, man. I promise you. There's reasons for it. You know, tier 1 guys, spec op people, they've had to cut through a different type of sand to get what they earned. And you can wear the same uniform. They're going to respect you for it, but you're not going to be in that circle. And I find that okay. That's the way it should be, you know?
So how do we want to wrap this up on mental health? What do we got here? 3 million had seriously thought of suicide.
That's 2020, yeah. Those numbers, so some of the data that's on here and even on current open sources.
1 in 5 young people reported that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental health. Well, hell yeah, it did.
Well, it also made us 97% more reliant on iPhones, and social media to express ourselves.
Freaking distance learning, work from home. Like, there's no camaraderie left. Like, what the hell? Like, I want to go to the workplace and see my people.
Yeah, and you know, you got to think, man, to wrap it up to your point is, in the next 10 years, let's talk about where we think we're going to be. You know, you've got people going to resorts outside the planet. You got people talking about putting bases on Moon and going to Mars.
Yeah.
And I believe that this stuff will happen. I'll be honest with you. You've got phones coming out every year that are faster, quicker, stronger. You got different social media feeds. You have 16 different ways to invest in crypto versus digitally pay on your phone. There's all these things that are going to change. So humans, we were created to adapt to change and evolve. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, the fundamental key, we can be a multi-planet bearing species. We can do whatever we decide. we better get to the basics.
I agree.
Faith and mental health is where it's at. And to wrap it up, I went very broad there, but my point is that scenario I just painted, that's exactly what you feel like when you're in a dark moment. The world is bigger than you. There's more out there than you can control, and you're tired of being in the situation you're in. And then something triggers it, and bad things happen.
Yeah.